Welcome to NJ Press Pass. I'm your host, Carly Romalino, based at the Courier-Post in Cherry Hill. And this is my favorite time of year. It's pumpkin spice coffee. My whole house is covered in autumn leaves. And it's election season. So I'm a total geek for the American electoral process. And, from the presidency all the way down to school boards and fire districts. And I have a couple of election geeks on here with me today. This is everything elections episode to making sure your ballot is filled out properly and delivered on time so it's not rejected, how to get involved, working at polling locations and helping to count. And we're going to get some idea of how long it might take for us to locally count ballots and when we could see some results. So with me today is Stephanie Salvatore. She is Gloucester County Superintendent of Elections. You may recognize her if you follow me from a recorded Zoom interview we did together over the summer about the state's vote by mail primary elections. And we also have Joe Dugan. He is Burlington County Board of Elections Chairman and Maple Shade's former mayor. He's actually joining us from the board office in Burlington County, as is Stephanie in Gloucester County. And finally, we have Rich Bowen from Cherry Hill. I actually met Rich at midnight on Election Day in 2019. We were both at the Camden County Board of Elections office at midnight to watch them open and prepare their vote by mail ballots. That was a really big vote by mail push they had that year. And in hindsight, Rich, what a bunch of foreshadowing that was.
Who knew, right?
Right. Absolutely. We didn't know that we were getting that inside view of what was to come a year later.
That is very true. Very true.
So for the primary in July, we did some live broadcasting from Gloucester County's Board of Elections warehouse. I got to see, as Rich did a year before, everybody kind of spread out there. And even though we were granted access to broadcast and, just show a live look of what it looked like, some comments on social media kept saying people were very skeptical on how secure the hand opening of ballots were. What you're looking at here is a ballot sorting machine. Rich, why did you sign up a year ago to be a challenger for Election Day? And did you have similar questions then about voter fraud? Tell us what you saw and if it changed your mind.
Well, I was a candidate for Cherry Hill Township Council with the Libertarian Party in 2019. And as a candidate, you are actually automatically registered as a challenger to your own campaign. In addition, you can ask other people of your campaign staff, friends, neighbors, family to also become challengers. They would have to register separately to become a challenger. And a challenger allows you to be at the polling places, to cross off people who come in to vote. It's used mostly from a political standpoint to cross people off as they come into the vote. And about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, someone else will come in and you'll give the list of names of people are supporting you who have not voted yet. And what you do is you have staff actually go and call those people and then or maybe have drivers ready to pick people up to get the vote out. So it's a dual purpose. Challengers are really a dual purpose. They're there for making sure everything is working correctly and that your voters are being represented, and also for political purposes to get out the vote.
So what did you see a year ago in that polling location where we were? So just to set the scene, if you're just joining us, I met Rich last year at the Camden County Office of Elections. It actually has a really long name that I didn't write down right now, but it's their main elections headquarters for the whole county where all the ballots are processed. And they had just happened to do a really big vote by mail push that year, kind of as an experiment. Which we were just saying didn't know was going to be so important now. But we watched, maybe 100 or so people opening ballots and flattening them out. So tell us what you saw and if that going into this year is on your mind at all?
Yeah, last year I was there to just basically to observe. I'm a night owl. I thought I'd go over and meet people and say hello and watch the process. The process is, they get set up, and Carly, you remember, you and I weren't allowed to go in until they were all set up.
That's
and
right.
we were actually escorted in, not allowed to cross over a yellow line or get involved or get involved at all, but just to observe. And what we observed was the mail already pretty much pre-sorted by township. And at each table, there was a Republican representative and there was a Democratic representative. And each of those two people would get stacks of, I think it was 50 or 100 ballots.
That sounds about right, Rich. Yeah.
That they could start open and checking to make sure that, everything was correct. One would check and the other would check. And if everything was okay, it would go into a pile ready to be compiled and counted. So it was pretty much what I've expected. I've been involved in politics for a number of years. I've been a challenger many times for other candidates. I haven't done any counting at the facilities, but I did spend a lot of time at polling locations, checking off people who voted and then sending lists out to people to start getting people who hadn't voted out to the polls. So it was pretty much what I expected, but nonetheless, it was good to see anyway. And my feeling is more people should do that just from a level of transparency. It would be nice for the people who are working to see that there are people interested in how they're doing their job and they're doing it correctly. And I think it just adds to the transparency of the whole situation.
So election law says ballots can't be opened or prepared until election day. That's why we were there at midnight.
At
they
midnight
decided to go early.
Right, Monday night into Tuesday into election day morning, correct.
So Stephanie, at the Board of Elections, at the Office of Elections, take us through what they're actually doing, and are you going to have to start at midnight this year?
So no, there's a new law this year with this election that we can open and the Board of Elections can start prepping and opening those ballots 10 days before the elections. So they can start counting. They cannot release results. Our equipment is actually going to be locked that we can't even look at the results until election day. So right now, what we're waiting on is the Board of Election Commissioners to determine if we're counting the full 10 days before, 5 days before. They haven't decided on that quite yet. That's a Board of Elections. So once they determine if we're counting early, and which I think we're going to have to, because I don't see how we can possibly open 160,000 ballots on election day in one day. Even if we started at midnight like Camden, which we don't here in Gloucester County because we need a little bit of sleep. So right now that's what we're waiting on in Gloucester County. We're waiting for our commissioners to determine, are we going to utilize those full 10 days the governor is letting us have to open and count, or are we using 5 days or so?
So opening means you were very clear to say, you can't look at the results. But opening means, that the top is opened of each envelope. Tell me how they're processed up until they're fed through counting machines. And are the counting machines behind you right now?
These are actually results. These are our computer result machines.
Oh, okay.
We actually have new count equipment that's in the other room, but it's just so noisy in our building right now. So I had to come hide in the count room, but what's behind me is where the results will pop up once we do start the counting. Well, a ballot will come into the Board of Elections office. It's scanned in the SVRS, and what's new this year and what I love is a voter can go on the New Jersey website, vote.nj.gov. They can track their ballot. They can see when the county clerk mailed their ballot out, see when the Board of Election gets it back in, and then they can are going to be able to see when the Board of Election counts it. So that procedure starts, but then come the time for opening the ballots. Once the signatures are verified and the board of Democrat and Republican workers come in, they strip the names off the ballots. They will then open that inner secrecy envelope, take that ballot out, unfold it, and at that point, once it's unfolded and counted, it goes into another room where our vendor is going to come in and we're going to feed them through high-speed tally machines and tally those votes.
So I actually have a question for you about the people who were doing the opening and the flattening. What's security of that area like? And Joe, you can pop in here too and tell us what it's like in Burlington County as well. But are people allowed to have like bags or cell phones and like food and water?
We can't take the chance that the ballot is going to be damaged.
Okay. So can they have, Joe, you can answer this one too. Can they have like their like bags out? I didn't notice anything like that the couple of times that I have been there of anybody having like extra stuff on their tables, especially, you know, during coronavirus now. There was really nothing. Can you talk about that? Just what the security is like?
Our people have been doing this job for years, most of them, right? They all know the procedure. Now, they don't bring things with them. If they do, they put them underneath the table where they're sitting, and everything is done on top of the table. Is only election work.
Okay. Are there cameras and in the area that catch all that?
We are walking around. The workers are walking around. If I see somebody having something on the table, I'm telling them, I'm sorry, you can't do that. But I very seldom have to do that.
Are you a tough cookie?
No, underneath that. Lunchtime. Take care of that at lunchtime.
So have there been any additional security measures in general that your two offices have put into place in the last 6 months or so? Since security has been such, it's been, you know, on the tip of everyone's tongues and in, you know, the forefront of our brains. Go ahead, Joe.
We found out that we were going to be facing this new election. We sat down with our people, you know, and like I said, I have marvelous workers in our office. And we just said, what is it going to take to make this election work? First thing we had a problem is my office was way too small to handle the amount of ballots that are going to come in. The county was very kind to us. They found us a wonderful spot to use. It fits all our needs. And believe me, we are happy as larks right now. The next problem we had is because the volume was going to be so heavy, we needed more people. But as you probably know, we're only opening half of our polling places. So I have extra workers that I can convert to processors and bring them into that process. So that will allow us to add to the people we need. The third problem we had was we needed more time to count the ballots. When we had this many ballots coming in, thank God the governor's order came through and has given us 10 days prior that we can start counting ballots. And let me assure you, Burlington County is going to start on that first day to start counting these ballots. And then the last problem we had was, will the post office be able to handle the delivery of our ballots? I believe they can. I think sometimes the post office takes a bad rap in certain areas. The drop boxes are wonderful, and I can't stress to everybody, if you're going to take care of your ballot, please put it in a drop box. As I said before, it will be in my office the same day you drop it in that box, and we will begin to process it. The only thing I can see that can deter this election slightly, and I'm not trying to make Steph look bad, right, is the provisional ballots. If we get hit with thousands of provisional ballots, we have a delay on our hands. Because when we get provisional ballots, we cannot start counting them. We got to send them up to Steph so she can review them. She sends them back to the Board of Elections, and then we start the process. So if you go to the polls to vote, you are not going to be able to vote on a machine. You're going to be given a paper ballot. It's almost the exact same ballot you received in the mail. So please use the one you received in the mail, and don't go to the polls and go provisional.
So I just want to clarify when he said send it up to Steph. In Burlington County, Steph will not be there. It'll be.
I have a wonderful superintendent of elections too.
Yep. It'll be her equivalent, but in Burlington County, and then Stephanie has a Joe equivalent.
That to be facetious, but Steph is with us today.
We got you there. So, Joe, you did say that you have folks that have been doing this job for you, processing ballots and working in polls for years. Who are these people? where do you find them? How do they get involved? And are either of your offices looking for more people?
Well, as you know, half of our workers are Republican and half of them are Democrats. So we have to have their registration taken into consideration, right? We contact people, we advertise. If we have somebody come in and say, I know somebody, senior citizens are very helpful. We go to senior citizens clubs and ask people to, it's not as difficult as you would think to find, because we need thousands of people to work the elections. But I was surprised when I first started out many years ago. I've been on the board for 15 years. How easily it is to find people that will work. There's a lot of camaraderie there. They like being together. They have lunch together. A lot of people come together. They say, can I work with certain people? It's a nice process to witness. It truly is. And it's a process that works.
Does it make you feel truly American?
Yes.
Rich, have you ever worked a poll or, been part of actually opening? I haven't asked you that question.
The only thing I've ever done was challenge on the political side at polling places. And again, back in the old days, before there was mail-in, you had a few absentee ballots, but we'd be there actually at 8 o'clock or whenever the polls closed, and the poll workers would actually take the results off the machines. And as a challenger from whatever party you happen to be working with, you could view and certify those results right on the premises and make sure that information got to wherever it was going.
So before we hop right into our next topic, which is how to make sure your ballot is not rejected, I do just want to say, if you have a question for any of our experts, please put them in the comments and we'll address them immediately. This show is about connecting you with the best people to answer those questions. So we are taking your questions. Pop them in the comment. If they come in late, unlike your ballot, we will still get to them later on. So that is a good segue because coming in late is a reason to be rejected. We'll get to that in a couple minutes. But what are some things that voters should avoid? For many of us, it's the first time we're filling out a paper ballot like this. We've gotten used to using technology. Can you guys, Steph or Joe, can you kind of get into a couple things that maybe your pet peeves that people need to really know about?
I'll hand it over to you. How's that? The biggest problem we have, right, is for people on the secrecy envelope, right? There's a flag. And now it's a lot easier this year than it is in normal election years. Usually there's more information on that flag that a voter has to fill out. Today, the only thing they have to do is sign their name on the flag. That's all they have to do. But they must sign it like they normally sign their name. The biggest reason we have for rejecting a ballot is signature matches. And we'll go on record for the signature that we have on record, and it's a lovely John Hancock written. We open up their ballot, and it's a line running across the thing. How can we certify that that person did that when their signature is nowhere near what it appears in our records as they did on the ballot? So that as on the application. So that's the biggest problem we have. The second problem we have, people will fill out the flap, take the flap off and throw it away. We must have that flap attached when you send the ballot back. They're the two biggest problems we deal with when they come in. Signature matches are always the most serious problem we have and the most difficult to settle. Steph?
So one thing also, number one, right now, what we're looking at this time is we need to make sure you are registered to vote. So number one, make sure you're registered to vote. And the deadline for that is Tuesday, the 13th, this coming Tuesday. But as far as rejection, you want to make sure that ballot is in the mail by November 3rd. If you try to mail it the 4th of November, it's not going to count. So you want to make sure your ballot is postmarked November 3rd. I think earlier is good, or you get it directly in the Dropbox. That's even better. A Dropbox is going to come directly back to the Board of Elections. But yes, it's signature. It's all about your signature. And there's a lot of different levels with signature verification. But Joe's going to be very busy in the Board of Elections because with this cure letter, if he finds voters' signatures not matching up, the state now has you reaching out to those voters, and the Board of Election Commissioners reaching out to these voters with the cure letter. And that cure letter is going to be asking the Board of Elections, ask the voter to please verify that this chicken scratch is your signature. So they did, so that is something new this year, and I think that's something nice for the voters, because before, some of those signatures would be, and I was always very, and I worked here 26 years, so I started at the Board of Elections and now as a superintendent of elections, and we're all together in the same building. That's why we're referred to Gloucester County as the Office of Elections. So each county is a little different. We're similar to Camden County, all under one roof. But I always was very sensitive to signatures because my father had Parkinson's. So it's good for voters to update their signatures when they can, and let us know, hey, I changed my signature. But this year they are offering, the state has, the Board of Elections offering cure letters for those signatures that just are looking a little questionable.
Another problem we have is people, you'll hear, I hear it already. Somebody got 2 ballots. My father's been dead for 2 years. He got a ballot. None of that matters. When they come back to our office and they go into the system, if you send 2 ballots, we know you sent 2 ballots. Right. If somebody has passed away, we know they passed away. The problem is, if somebody passes away, somebody in the family should notify the superintendent's office that so-and-so has passed away. Please take them off the rolls. But very few people do that, and that is why these things happen. But do they get the vote? No, they do not get the vote.
I have a question about how would you update your signature? Because I know, calling for that information, you could just call in and it's noted. But a signature, do you have to go to the Board of Elections?
Steph brought up a good point. These cure letters we're sending out from our office right now, they're going to have to sign that cure letter saying, yes, that is my signature. That's the signature we're going to be using as their official signature. So come next election, we'll be comparing the signature they put on their application to that signature that they sent in.
So we did just get a question from Samantha Paul, and she said, how do we find out what our signature looks like? Mine changes often. And for people who maybe registered to vote as a teenager, maybe when they were writing like hearts over their eyes and stuff, maybe it's their signature has matured.
I'm going to pass this to Steph. She handles all the books that have the signatures in them. She's more knowledgeable in this area than I am.
Yeah, so how can you check that out for yourself to make sure it still is matching?
So the voter can just come into our office and we can show them exactly what we have on record. So when we do the comparison, sometimes we may look not only what your voter registration record was, and maybe you registered to vote 10 years ago. We also look at the last time you voted. We look at your vote by mail application. If there's any kind of an update, we also get signature matches through our MVC. But any voter is welcome to call us. They can open that information. They can come in and look in a book. So we'd be happy to show. So when you vote in person, like a normal election, when you actually open the poll book, you can see your signature right there when you go to vote. Of course, voting by mail is a little different. So if they need to check that out, we're open and they can check that out anytime.
So the easiest way would probably be driving up and popping in with your mask on, coming up to your office and just saying, can I take a look at my signature? I'm sure, do they have to show like their proof of who they are before they try to see somebody else's signature?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. You can't, it's not open. It's not something for open public record. So we can't just give out your signature for identity purposes. Right. Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give the impression that the Board of Elections are Simon Legree people, right? If we see any similarity at all, we will accept that signature. We're not there to reject every signature coming down the line. Sure. But some are just so offensive that we just cannot ignore it and we have to act on it.
Gotcha. So what happens if you maybe spill that pumpkin spice latte all over it, or your dog eats your ballot that came in the mail? I know maybe some people just it might be accidentally thrown away. How do you get a new one, and what is the deadline to do that?
If we can see how you voted the ballot, when it comes in, and as you saw when they were processing the ballots, if we come through across the ballot that we know will not go through the scanner, we can duplicate that ballot. We don't know who signed it. It's anonymous at that time. The ballots have been separated, right? We can take a damaged ballot and transfer it onto one that can go through the processor.
Okay.
So as long as it's not disgusting to send through the mail, send us the damaged ballot and we will process it and we will count it.
So what if it's lost, maybe accidentally thrown away at home?
When you apply for a new ballot.
And how do you do that? And how long do you have? Okay, at the clerk's office. Do you know what the deadline is to apply?
I have it written down here somewhere, but I'm gonna have to look up it. I think it's 29 days before the election. Is that what it is? I don't know. I shouldn't do that because I might be. Very quickly, if you understand the system, there's three stages to the election process. There's the clerk who sends out the ballots, who sent out 317,000 ballots in Burlington County, right? Then you have the Board of Elections. We hire the workers. We count the mail-ins when they come in, right? We do a number of other things. And then we have Steph, who the poll book, she has to handle that. I'm not going to speak for her what her duties are, but there's 3 different offices involved, and we all have our different areas that we have to attend to.
So this has been a really hot topic in the comments.
The clerk issues the ballots. The clerk issues your ballot.
So this has been a really hot issue in the comments section. We have another question from Jenny, and she wants to know what happens if you haven't yet voted in a precinct, so there's no signature to match yet. And I feel like that might be like a registration issue.
When you apply for that ballot, we have the application where you applied to get a ballot mailed to you. You have to sign that, and we can use your application to compare to the ballot.
Perfect. So the Courier-Post and Burlington County Times, we actually have a voter guide for you. My colleague Jared Safran put that together. It just published this morning. We are going to drop that in the comments, so you can click on that there. Basically it's your FAQ of what to do. Again, if you have a badly damaged one, and we can update that from our conversation here too, because I think we've gotten a lot of more meaty information. But I do want to get to the issue of showing up late in the mail. For the primary, there were, I think I had talked to both of you for a story about ballots that were rejected because they didn't meet postmarking timestamps. And, I had reported that the U.S. Postal Service in Camden County and potentially other places in New Jersey had not postmarked ballots that were in the office on July 7th, which was the primary day. They hadn't postmarked them, even though they were there until the 8th. So Camden County did accept them because U.S. Postal Service took responsibility for that. And they were a little bit dodgy, the Postal Service was, when I tried to ask them about the specifics. But now we have a Postal Service worker this week arrested, facing federal charges for allegedly dumping mail, which included about 100 ballots in Essex County. So that seems a little bit troubling to some people. Not the only report that we've had. And I'm asking you guys, the 3 of you specifically, do you trust the Postal Service generally? And what method of voting do you plan to take, or have you already? And Rich, do you want to kick this off?
Yeah, I trust the Postal Service, and I actually mailed my ballot already about a week ago. But in saying that, there is the processes in place now with trackmyballot.newjersey.gov, where you can actually put in your personal information. It's your voter ID number, your Social Security or driver's license number, I believe. And you can check to make sure that that ballot has been received. If you are a person who doesn't trust the post office, the great part about it is there are other methods now, and the drop boxes are great. There are other, you can personally deliver your ballot to the Board of Elections if you are worried about your vote being counted. So I don't have a problem with the mail, but I'm gonna check anyway. I'm gonna make sure that my vote's counted. I think the best advice is do it early and do it in the method that you feel the most comfortable, and confirm it. Confirm that that ballot has been received, and there should be no issues.
Rich, I agree. I think the important thing, the governor's new order gives them 7 days, right, to get the ballots to our office, and we can still count them as long as they were postmarked on election day. So they can have ballots in their post office till 7 days after the election that still will be counted as long as they were postmarked on election day. That's a big help. as far as how I'm not a postal worker, so I don't know how quickly, but I kind of agree with Rich. I think we can rely on the post office, and you hear these stories about ballots turning up in rivers and things like, and being destroyed. I can't explain that. I really can't. And I certainly hope it's not true, but I know it's not, everywhere.
Steph, you oversee the voting machines in your county. That's part of your job as the superintendent of elections. And knowing you professionally for a long time, you like to get into that voting machine. So this is a sad year for you. So how do you plan to mark your vote?
So I'm a little different than the guys, and it's not about not trusting the system. I do trust the post office, of course. I mail my taxes and my Christmas cards through the postal system. But I just feel safer as the voter that I have that ballot in my hands, voted in my hands, and given it myself directly back to the Board of Elections, whether it be in their drop box or at a polling location or to the election office, because then it's gone from my hands to the Board of Elections hands to be counted, and it takes out that middle person. And it's not about that I think foul play could happen. However, I live rurally. My mailbox is across the street. So how about it's raining or a car goes by and hits my mailbox and my mail goes flying all over. So I don't want to add another layer of hands or a situation happen around my ballot. So if I have the ballot in my hands and I voted it, I am personally going to get it right back here to the Board of Elections. Of course, I work here, but that's how I'm telling my family. I'm telling my family to use the drop boxes, and I have family in all different counties. I'm telling them to use the Board of Election drop boxes or bring it directly to the election office themselves, just to weed out the middle ground of it getting lost in the rain, or God forbid the mail truck gets into an accident and mail gets all over the place. So I'm a little bit, but I do not believe foul play, because that's a federal offense, and I don't know too many people that want to go to jail over tampering with a federal election. I'm certainly not going to jail for this election. So that's a little bit.
That's how I defend the post office. I agree with you 100%. The drop boxes, as I started this conversation with, is the way to vote. And keep in mind, the more we use the drop boxes, the less the post office has to handle, and it eases their job getting the mail to us. But the things that make me insane, we have a drop box outside of our office in Mount Holly, but I drop right at the door. People are coming in to turn their ballot into the office. We have to change the mentality and try to make them understand how safe it is to use the drop boxes, because they are the answer to our system.
So it's pretty universal that the drop boxes every 24 hours are collected, and they're collected by either county workers and maybe sheriff's officers. Yeah, our sheriff's officers, I did hear that at some point in certain counties are helping to collect them. Is that happening in Gloucester County?
Yes, so we're using the sheriff officers. We're making sure that the Board of Elections makes sure it's two different parties. So there's a chain of custody. So the sheriff officers, different parties pick these ballots up. They sign off on them. They bring them to the Board of Elections office. Democrat and Republican representatives from the Board of Elections stand by the boxes while those ballots are counted, and everything is signed off, numbered, that count, what was delivered, what the Board of Elections got in. So there is a chain of custody, and there's a paper trail that goes along with those. But yes, it is. It's both parties. It's just we're a small staff in Gloucester County, so right now we have to depend on shared services and seasonal employees to be around to help our normal 5 people in the building.
So I did ask on our NJ Press Pass web series group on Facebook. I asked this question, the question that I started out asking you guys: how do you plan to vote? And that is not who you're voting for. That is the method in which you're turning in your ballot. And so I asked 2 days ago, 90 people responded. More than 70% plan to fill out their ballot and drop it in the drop box. So you'll be happy to hear that, Joe. And a little more than 18% will vote in person at polling locations. Coming in last place, it was only like about 10 people, which equated to like 10% or something, said that they're going to put it in the mail. So Rich, you're in the minority there.
Yeah. But remember, well, I also did say I'm going to verify that it was received, which I think is a good policy.
Hey, I track all my Amazon packages like to the minute. So I think I would actually enjoy watching it go through the process there. But are those, go ahead, Joe.
I don't want to be negative about going to the polls to vote. Going to the polls to vote is just as safe and will be just as accurate, will be counted just as well as if you dropped it into the box. It's just the time that it takes to accomplish that we would like not to have to do. Right.
Because instead of, you guys can get a head start 10 days ahead if it's coming in the mail or Dropbox.
Exactly right.
Those won't be voted on, opened until election night, which brings me, great segue, Joe. Thank you. It brings me to this theory I keep hearing kind of nationally, and I wanted to run it by you. Have any of you heard the theory that voting at the polls will help counting go more quickly on election night? So I've heard that people want to vote at polling locations because they figure if I vote here, there's going to be less. My vote will be counted today. There'll be no question about my ballot. What's your take on that theory? And Rich, I want to hear from you on this as well as a voter, if you thought about that at all. But Steph and Joe, do you have any take on that?
Well, that won't be pertinent this year because you cannot vote on a machine unless you're handicapped.
Right. So
that's not even going to come into play for this election.
I think it was just going to a polling location, period. And I think maybe people don't understand that there's no machine, so it's not instantly tabulated.
The only machines there are for handicapped people that cannot sign their name.
So
everybody else will do provision. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add, so what some people are insistent on going to a polling location, and something that is new, and Joe's right with what he's saying, if it's a provisional ballot, but something new that the governor is letting us do for this election is that ballot that is mailed to you. The county clerk mails you your ballot. That ballot that is mailed to you is your main ballot. You may vote that main ballot and bring it to your assigned polling location on election day. If you bring that main vote by mail ballot to your polling location on election day, that is counted immediately. If you go to a polling location without your main mailed ballot and you have to do a provisional ballot, the provision is there has to be a 10 to 14 day investigation to make sure you didn't vote your mail-in ballot. So that's where the delay comes in if you want to vote in person. Voting in person is by paper. So it's either you're bringing in what's mailed to you or you're voting a provisional ballot. That provisional ballot may not be counted for 2 weeks after the election due to the investigation and the provision that you didn't vote someplace else so that you're registered to vote. And as Joe said, there will be an ADA compliant device at the machine. It's a device. It's not a voting machine. It's a device for visually impaired voters to vote independently. So that is available for your visually impaired voters.
That's a good point, Stephanie, and thank you for bringing it up. But when you go to the polls with your ballot, you can only bring your personal ballot. You can't bring anybody else's ballot. That's
okay. So last week I created a map, and you can click off your county. It tells you the exact address and location of every single drop box in South Jersey, even parts of Ocean County, all the way down to Cape May County. I do want to say we're going to drop that into the comments. You can click that and find your location. I will say you can't just put if I live in Gloucester County, I can't put mine in a Burlington County box, correct?
correct.
Okay, so keep that in mind. But I wanted to ask you guys, how are the locations of polling places and these boxes determined? Who did that work? And what information was used? Was it demographic information? Was it, based on what, buildings are available that had security cameras on them and, public buildings? Can somebody talk about that?
The good news is right now, because my office was in charge of the drop boxes, right?
Okay.
We had 5 for the primary election. We were given 13. A total of 13 for this election. Now, Burlington County is a large county in area. So what we did is we took population into consideration when we placed the drop boxes, and then we also took areas into consideration. Now, we've had a few complaints. I wish I had a drop box in every town, and I think someday that will happen, and I'm hoping it will be by our next election. But we didn't have as many complaints as I thought we might be getting as to where we located our drop boxes. And again, area was taken into consideration and population was taken into consideration. And I think it's working out very, very well.
Steph, do you have any thoughts about that? Was it your Board of Elections in Gloucester County that worked on that as well?
Yes, so there was yes, we had a tie vote. So there was a lawsuit in Gloucester County. They weren't in agreement, and so that was with the polling locations. And because it was a tie vote, it went to the county clerk to be the tiebreaker. So we have polling locations assigned now in Gloucester County. Yes, so with the drop boxes, they look at the density in the area to see what's convenient. As you know, living out in Franklin's very rural. But you're in the township of Deptford or Washington Township. Washington Township is huge. It's 45,000 voters. So Washington Township could get a couple boxes because they're spread out, whereas Franklin Township would only get one. And there is legislation now. So starting in February 2021, any town with a population of over 5,000 will be getting a drop box. So we do plan on putting one in every town in Gloucester County come February. So that is a little bit, that's a good thing. I think right now why we only were limited to 13 boxes, we were too in Gloucester County because of the supply and demand across the country. There's special ballot boxes, and they're not just being used in New Jersey, they're being used across the country. So I think the state of New Jersey just couldn't get their hands on enough to cover every county, every town. So we were limited to our size. Our population size of voters.
Gotcha. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, in Camden County, Carly, I don't know exactly why they picked the locations they did. I'm assuming the Camden County locations are almost entirely at municipal buildings of some of the bigger townships in the county. There's one at Camden County College, and there's one at the County Administration Building in Camden. There's 13 total in Camden County, and I'm assuming for the same reasons as Steph just mentioned, that's what they've done. But Camden County looks like they restricted it, or just restricted it to municipal buildings.
Rich,
municipal buildings, first of all, they have to be under a camera. There has to be a camera on the box. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot easier to do it at the municipal complexes. And also in Burlington County, every voter, when they got their ballot, received a letter stating where every box is located and where every polling place is located under the new system for this election.
Rich, looking at the map there in your county, do you feel like they're fairly distributed, knowing the makeup of Camden County, Rich?
I wish we had a few more boxes, but dealing with what we had to deal with, I think we did a very good job choosing where. And like I said, I think we've only had 2 complaints. Keep in mind, I don't want to go into our county. It's huge. I mean, it's our
sure
is huge, and there were a few people that thought maybe we should have had some closer in the outskirts. But we really did the best we could.
Yeah, and in Camden County, it's well represented. It's Cherry Hill, Camden, Voorhees, down to Winslow Township, Lindenwold. The only objections you might get is probably some of the smaller municipalities may have to drive or go to another municipality to use a drop box. But from what I can tell, those 13 locations are definitely well represented geographically.
So just a reminder, we did put our interactive map in the comments. If you maybe lost that sheet that came with your ballot, you can just hop onto that map, click your county. It'll tell you where everything is located. And this is a kind of a reminder. We're 45 minutes into our conversation. So this is really your last call to ask us your questions directly to our panelists who are experts in elections, whether they've run for office, managed all the electoral processes here. But make sure you're putting your questions into the comments now so we can get to them in the next couple of minutes. Speaking of, Norma wants to know, She comments, so when I went to the Board of Elections in my county and they requested ID, how are mail-in or drop boxes checking ID? So I'm not sure. Go ahead.
We don't have to check ID on the mail-in ballots, but if you deliver them in person, we do have to check your ID.
So why is that?
That's the way the law is.
Okay.
That's the way the law is.
So a couple
When
things.
we get your ballot, when you mail it in, we compare signatures, so forth and so on. There are many areas where we can verify where that ballot came from and who it came from. But when you're delivering a ballot, we always ask for ID.
Go ahead, Steph. Did you want to add to it?
So when a person, when they were first registering to vote and they voted at they registered through MVC or they did online voter registration, if we do not have a signature or we do not have the New Jersey driver's license or the last 4 digits of their social security number, when we put that voter registration in the system, we tag them need ID. So the county clerk won't send out. We'll send out as far as your registration. If we need ID from my office, the superintendent, when you first register, we will send you notification that we need your signature. We need a utility bill. We need something. And most people have a New Jersey driver's license, but if they don't, the last 4 of your social security. We're connected to MVC and we're connected to social security. So if you provide a bad social security, it comes back and says no match found. So you will be flagged and you will have to show ID if you want to vote. So that could be one of the reasons why somebody was flagged, either no signature on record or when they first registered to vote, we didn't get that information that's asked for on a voter registration. And at that point, we will reach out to that person to kind of clarify and get that taken care of as soon as possible.
Norma, I hope that answered your question. I do want to kind of get into something that's actually really on my mind because I'm used to getting, we're used to calling elections on election night. And I guess maybe the little bit of that magic of finding out who the winners are late into the night or super early in the morning is going to be gone this year. Can our experts kind of deliver a timeline of when you think we're going to know who our new president is, new or continued president will be, and even, mayors and council people and school board members. There are so many selections we have to make on our ballot. So any idea when we may know? Is it going to be, what are you thinking from what's coming in and knowing the timeline to count these things and verify these things and reach out to voters? Joe, you're smiling away.
I'm going to dodge this one. You will have an idea, but keep in mind all these timelines that I've told you, where the post office has 7 days to get mail to us, and so has time to get mail to us. The numbers are going to change. So if it's a very, very close election, it's going to be a little while before we know exactly who the winner is. But if it's not real close, you're not going to have enough ballots floating around out there to change the outcome. Then you will have an idea of what the determining who the winner is going to be.
So do you think it'll be like mid-November we'll know?
Oh, I don't think we go that far. I really don't. I just cannot
Okay.
imagine. The only thing that, again, and Stephanie will grab, the provisionals will tie us up. That is the biggest delay in our process. Okay. And if we have a lot of provisionals, it's going to be maybe a week. But going into the middle of November, I find that not in Burlington County, I can tell you that right now. Yeah. But other parts of the country, I don't know what's going on there. But in Burlington County, that would be out of the question.
Is it most likely that we'll be able to have our very local elections have concrete results on them first before, maybe congressional seats?
Probably.
Okay. Well, that's something to look forward to then. We'll pay attention.
No promises.
I know everything's kind of up in the air here. So I do want to get our final thoughts on elections. Starting with you, Rich. I'm not asking you guys to divulge who you hope wins, but maybe just kind of some final thoughts. And I mean, win on like any race. We're not going to get into that, but just Rich, you're here with two experts. I'm going to give you
Right.
the opportunity. Do you have any questions directly for them that you want answered first?
Well, I do have one question, but I'll kind of make my closing statement here. I'm
Sure.
obviously coming from this from a different angle than my two esteemed colleagues. I'm coming in from it as a political operative. And in my case, my message to everybody would be get involved. If you are not sure, or you are unsure, or you don't feel that the results are going to be fair, I think that's incorrect. But the best way to determine that and to feel better about it is to just get involved. And as a past candidate, campaign manager, we never have enough help. We need people to do so many things during the campaign, but especially on election day. We need people to challenge. We need people to go to the polls. We need people to drive their constituents, people who promise to vote, to the polls to vote. There are just so many things that can be done. Along with being challengers, get involved and become a poll worker. Go to the county and be one of those counters. The interesting thing I find that is the most people that are involved in the campaigns and are counters and the people that work for the Board of Elections, they really don't have any qualms about results and whether they're fair and reputable. They are. Those people that are just putting a ballot in the mail or putting it in a drop box and leaving it to its own devices may have a worse feeling about it because of all the white noise that's out there in the news. So the best way to do that is just to get a little more involved, even if it's as easy as mailing or putting it in a drop box and a few days later making sure that you verify that the Board of Elections has received that ballot. That should go a long way in making everybody feel confident that there are fair elections here. So that's really my point from a political operative. Obviously, the other two panelists come from a different angle. My question actually is just COVID related in terms of, and Carly, you remember when we were there, it's a large warehouse down the Board of Elections in Blackwood, but everybody was fairly close together at the same table, handling ballots, handing them back and forth to each other. I would be curious to know what things have been put in place because of COVID and separating 6-foot distancing, social distancing, and whatnot. What things, either by law or just on good practices, that the Board of Elections are doing this year.
I actually want to jump in here, and we should have some B-roll from the primaries when we were, at the height of COVID, I guess, at that point, although we're still deep into it. There should be some B-roll if we could get that up. Rich, there's
there
you
I am.
2019. No, that's funny. That is actually where we met, and that was you watching with your arms crossed. This, what you're seeing here is Camden County. That's a third-party vendor, and these ballots have all been opened, and they were put through the machines. That wasn't what I was thinking of, but Steph, you're actually going to tell us about this, because what I'm thinking of happened at your office, at how it was set up for COVID, the actual poll work or board workers opening.
Right. So that was a big challenge this year. We got 8-foot long tables, and we have a lot of husband and wives and people living in the same household that come and work in this, but the numbers were cut down a little bit, and we would put our room does have video surveillance besides commissioners walking around and the leads walking around, but we would put people at the ends of each table. So they were 6 feet apart. We had face coverings. We had frequent breaks to go wash our hands. We do not allow any of the food, or on a normal election, but the food, it was a little bit different this year, food and drink and that kind of stuff at the table. But it was more breaks. It was definite face coverings, masks, shields, sanitizer at each end with the workers. If they want gloves, we had gloves available. But like the CDC says, we would just wash your hands, wash your hands. And right in our warehouse, there's a couple bathrooms. So we did try to keep everybody 6 feet, 8 feet apart. We try to put people who maybe work at the same or live in the same household at a table together. They do it like an assembly line. So that kind of helps too. So yeah, that was definitely a challenge with the social distancing and the mask and all that fun stuff this year.
I can add in there, when I arrived there, I mean, obviously I had my mask. A lot of people had a mask and a shield as well. And these are just my observations of when I visited the Gloucester County Office of Elections while they counted. There was also a tent set up outside and they were doing temperature checks. I think there was a questionnaire. In order to come in, you had to fill out a questionnaire. And really it was like, unless you're working, don't come in the building. So unless you actually needed a reason, it wasn't, candidates weren't in there. And not even in the evening. There used to be a big screen set up and the candidates would come in just to watch the returns come through. Candidates weren't in there. No one hung out inside unless they were working in the big office.
When we were setting up the primary, I spoke to all our workers when they were sitting there and we had all the protections that you had. But I think what I said to them most important was, if you're not comfortable, if you see something wrong, tell us right away. If you feel you shouldn't be staying here, then we have no problem with you leaving, and we wish you, no problems at all. Nobody left, and I think the good news is 99% of them are coming back to work the general election. So somewhere along the line, they did get the idea that their protection was number one on our minds when we went into this project.
Rich, did you have something to?
Yeah, I just had one other question for Steph and Joe. Some of the things people I've been talking to, as a candidate, you used to ask the question, are you going to go vote? And do you need, help getting to the polls? Well, nowadays you ask the question, have you voted yet? But this year, I'm wondering if Steph or Joe are a little concerned that maybe the news isn't out enough that there really is no machine poll voting in New Jersey. And is there a better way to market that information? Are they worried that they're going to get more people showing up to the polls thinking they can vote there this year?
Thanks for that question, Rich. You'd be an excellent reporter.
Thank you.
I don't know what the answer to that is. I do think they're making it more prominent, but Rich, you're 100% correct. It's the key to our success to make this work smoothly is to have as few ballots at the polls as possible. Yep. That's the system. And if we can make people believe that, it certainly would help. But I don't know if we've done a good job or not. I'll be very honest with you. We're going to find out very soon.
Right.
I'll do my part, and we'll make sure to include that in all of our stories to be very clear.
I think that's an excellent idea. I think you probably can't promote that too much this year.
Amen.
Right. So, Steph, do you have a kind of a wrap-up thought for us? I think Rich gave a really thoughtful finale on what he had to say. What are your final thoughts for everybody and your feelings going forward in the next month?
So I feel good about this election. I mean, I know there's a lot of questions, and unfortunately, in this day and age of social media, people they're believing anything that people put on social media. So I think one of the main thing is for the voters out there, if they have questions, to call directly to our office or go on the New Jersey Division of Elections website to get the real information. Don't depend on your neighbor reporting something to you. I think education is key. I think education is key around the election, around every part of it. What you should do, what you shouldn't do, but more importantly, don't wait until November 3rd this time. I think early is better. And the earlier you do get your ballot into the Board of Elections, the sooner it will be counted. I'm kind of hopeful that November 3rd at 8:00 at night, when we post the results out there, that we have more than 80% of the turnout counted by November 3rd. So we're not waiting, because just like the voters, I don't want to wait 2 weeks for the results. I want to know who's going to be president, who's going to be the senator, who's going to be your county commissioners or your school board. I don't want to wait 2 weeks. I want to know when I wake up the 4th of November. So I think most importantly, if people get those in and they follow the directions, then we can have it that we're not waiting and we're not waiting another 2 weeks to get official results.
Joe, you're up. It's your turn for that final thought.
My final thought is I think the election is going to go well. What galls me to my bones is when people criticize the people that are trying to handle this election. My people get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and they stay till 9 o'clock at night. They work day after day after day. And to even imply that they don't know what they're doing just cuts me to the bone. I wish people could look over my shoulder and see how hard these people work day after day to make this system work and impress them with a free election.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, Joe, Rich, for joining me. That is our election special today. As always, I'm always happy to share my press pass with my readers, really just connecting you to our local experts. These might be my reporting sources, but on NJ Press Pass, it's always your questions that I'm asking. So make sure, South Jersey, always stay curious. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stay safe.